Let me start with an obvious one with Joe Burrow being the presumptive number one pick. You coached a number one pick in Cam Newton. What's this process like for that guy, to have a guy on your roster who's going to go number one overall?
Yeah, it's pretty incredible, guys. I mean, it's overwhelming, and I think Joe's handled this whole thing as good as anybody I've seen. But the process is demanding, and it's tiring for everybody, and it starts with you start catching the vibe during the season that you're a Heisman hopeful, right? Next thing you know, you're in New York, and it actually unfolds. But hold on for a minute, because you got to play for a national championship, right?
Right.
So then that's kind of the next thing on the docket. Then also when that gets done, now it's preparing for the combine. It's preparing for the Senior Bowl. It's all those things, right? Then all of a sudden that goes by. You're looking at meetings with GMs, head coaches all across the league. That's both coach, player, and parent. And the process never ends, guys. It's really, I would suspect that when this thing is over, and my suspicion is Joe's definitely going to be the first pick. When this is over, he's going to be so good. He's going to be so glad to clap out and let's put our head down and get ready to go to work and become a professional football player. Because about this time for Joe, it's probably getting pretty old.
Yeah. Coach, it's a very different process for Tua, who a year ago at this time was going to be the presumed number one pick. He has an injury, and now there's a little question about that. From your vantage point, having watched him, obviously, and scouted him for a long time during his career at Alabama, are you confident enough physically coming off the injuries that he's going to be a guy that's a valued NFL prospect?
Well, Matt, that's the big question mark, right? I mean, obviously, I'm not privileged to all the information in terms of his health. But think about this. You go to the combine, you get looked over by all the physicians, they give you the complete physical. I don't think people realize that part of this process is going back to Indianapolis 2 or 3, a couple of months later to get rechecked by the same physicians. Well, that never happened.
Right.
And you don't have any, you don't have, most pro days never happened. The facility visits couldn't happen. The physical rechecks couldn't happen. The private workouts couldn't happen. There's just a lot of question marks. So they're going to have to go on what they know about the young man and what they know about what his film says. And me watching him over the years, I will tell you that this guy just got the it factor. Everybody knows he's got an incredible arm talent. He's got great accuracy. He makes really, really great decisions. His football IQ is going to be off the chart. He's got the it factor. And you know what? When he goes into that locker room, if he can stay healthy, and if I'm at Miami and I'm at number 5, I'm taking him. Unless there is something that is definitive in those health documents that tells me and leads me to believe that he's not going to be able to withstand the punishment of the league, I'm taking him because I think he's just got an incredible upside. And let's remember, guys, he didn't play 4 years of college football.
Right.
I think his best days are ahead of him, and it'd be hard for me to turn down if I was Miami at number 5.
Gene Chizik's our guest. Coach, can you give me an example of a guy who you had at some point in your career? Obviously, not the identical scenario as Tua, but a guy who maybe was a bit overlooked because of an injury. Question how this process went by?
Well, I've had 5 first-round draft picks on my team, guys, and, through the years. That's all the way back from Vince Young to Dante Culpepper at Central Florida back in '98. And I don't think I've had anybody that was this is such a different scenario, Matt, because he was a no-brainer first-round top pick, right? I mean,
Right.
There was nothing that said different. And then all of a sudden, his health and his ability to stay healthy kind of comes in question. I don't know that I've quite had that scenario. We had Mitch Trubisky at North Carolina in his junior year. Nobody heard of him. Nobody knew who he was.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, his senior year, he turns out to be, one of the top players. I think he was drafted in the 2 spot. So I've seen scenarios happen where guys, come from nowhere and become the guy. I don't think I've seen this happened to somebody where he was the no-brainer, number 1 quarterback off the board, and then all of a sudden, because of a couple injuries, not because he played poorly, but because of a couple of injuries, kind of set him back. So this is kind of new territory for me.
Coach, I got two more things. Your time very much appreciated. Gene Chizik's our guest. He's on Twitter at Coach Gene Chizik. Number one, there's potentially a half dozen LSU guys that could go in round one, as many as maybe 16 overall that could be drafted. Is there a guy from this LSU roster outside of Burrow that look, we're talking about this many guys potentially getting drafted, but that you really like, maybe that's even being overlooked a smidge, that you think, man, that guy at the next level is just going to be awesome?
Well, I don't see Clyde Edwards-Helaire going in the first round. I think he's first round. I love Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I love everything he stands for. The dude's a grinder. He's low to the ground, center of gravity. He runs for tough yards. If it's him and a corner, him and a safety, him and a linebacker with about 1.5 feet to go for a first down, my money goes on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You can split him out. You can throw him the football. He's great with the ball in his hands after catch. I like what he does in the open field, and speed-wise, he's fast enough to do some damage. I really like him. I think he's a first-round talent, but I don't think he'll go in the first round. And let me add one more. I love Justin Jefferson because you know what? Everybody said he was going to be a second-round pick, third-round pick, whatever it was, because they questioned his speed. I loved everything about this kid. I loved the way he grinded. I loved the way he ran routes. I love the way he performed. I love the way he caught the football. I loved everything about him, and I'm so glad to see this dude move himself up. He's going to be a first-rounder tonight.
We are going to see potentially a half dozen LSU players taken in round one. It's going to be exciting times around these parts over the 3 days of the draft. Coach, before I let you go, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you your feeling on, from a coach's perspective, what it might be like dealing with the uncertainty right now about how to get a team ready in the offseason for a season that potentially could be delayed.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of anxiety out there about what's going on, Matt. I think everybody's kind of found their new normal after about 5 weeks of this. You're looking at a lot of Zoom meetings. You're looking at a lot of teaching meetings. The biggest question mark, as everybody would agree with, is the health and safety of the players when they get back. That would be my biggest takeaway from this. What are we going to do to ensure the fact that our players are safe and healthy? I'm not worried about whether he understands an over or an under defense. I'm worried that these young guys, with all this time off, all these gyms closed, let's be honest, it's hard to get these guys to, grind in the first place when you don't have a strength coach operating every day with them in their face. I'm not saying they don't all do it, but that's when they go home and have a gym or have a trainer. These guys don't have either right now. So the biggest question for these coaches and what they're all worried about in my conversations with them is what are their teams going to look like when they get back, if and when that happens.
Yeah. Coach Gene Chizik. Coach, I always enjoy visiting when we get the chance at SEC Media Days. Look like we won't get that chance this year in person, but a couple of minutes on the phone will be a very good consolation prize. We appreciate it. All the best to you and your family.
Thanks, Matt. I appreciate the time, brother.